Film music is important for the way that we interpret characters when we watch a film. Many people think that it is really difficult to pay attention to the music and difficult to talk about what music actually means. But my research shows that children as young as 7, they notice the music and they associate different musical aspects such as rhythm and timbre with characters' thoughts and emotions. My name is Signe Kjaer Jensen and I'm a senior lecturer at the Film and Literature Department at Linnaeus University. In this brief presentation, I'll talk about a PhD project I've done in which I've studied the importance of music in animated film, and I've interviewed a number of Danish children about the music in the Disney film Frozen. I'll focus on the way the children in my study talk about Elsa and her song Let It Go. So, film music is important because it helps guide the interpretation of a character's thoughts and feelings. It seems almost paradoxical that in animated films we have characters that are drawn by hand or created on a computer, and despite this artificiality of the characters, we have no problem identifying with the characters as if they were actually living psychological beings who have thoughts and feelings even outside of the screen. In order to identify with a character, we have to be able to understand a character's thoughts and feelings so that we can also understand why the character acts the way he or she does. If we don't believe that a character has thoughts or feelings at all, then we'll probably not understand the character as being alive, and the character will instead appear dead or mechanical. In animated film, we have numerous entities that come to life, so to speak, which we don't normally think of as living beings. In Wall-E we have robots, in Toy Story we have toys, and in Frozen we have a snowman. The difference between a toy being just a regular toy in an animated film and a toy being alive is that we understand the living toy to have thoughts and feelings, an inner life, so to speak. A character doesn't have to have a particularly complicated inner life to be understood as alive. In Frozen, for example, we have the reindeer Sven. Most of Sven's thoughts seems to be about wanting carrots. Some might also interpret him as being critical of some of Kristoff's actions, but actually the enjoyment of carrots is in itself enough to be a sign of an inner life. There are several elements in film that are part of communicating a character's thoughts to us. There are, for example, facial expressions, voices, body language, and dialogue. In our everyday life, we also respond to other people's thoughts and emotions all the time by interpreting their facial expressions, words, and body language. And it is no different in films, except that in film we also have the music to help us. Music is often associated with emotions, and filmmakers use this association to guide the interpretation of both the emotions of characters and the overall atmosphere of a scene. Just think of a horror film and how it becomes much less frightening when the sound is turned off. So now I want to move on to explain how music guides children's interpretation of Elsa's inner life in Let It Go. And due to copyright reasons, I can't play the clip here or even show you screenshots. So I recommend that you pause this video and go watch Let It Go before you continue. When I talked to the children in my study about Let It Go, there were 2 different ways for the children to engage with the sequence. Either the children were very attentive to Elsa as a psychological being, her words and her thoughts and feelings, or the children were very attentive to Elsa as an aesthetic attribute, to the audiovisual spectacle of the sequence, so to speak. So these children were interested in the artful aspects, in how beautiful the colors were, the fine snowflakes, and in singing and dancing together with Elsa. But they cared less about Elsa's feelings or what she was actually singing about. So of course it's not that you can't enjoy the music and the fine colors and also be interested in Elsa as a psychological being at the same time. It is more that these 2 different kinds of engagement are mixed in different proportions. So some children like to talk about Elsa and try to understand her, while others were more interested in her in the way that you are interested in a dance performance that you watch. The majorities who were interested in talking about Elsa as a character with thoughts and feelings, they showed that they connect the musical energy and Elsa's body language and facial expressions with her shifting emotions. So basically, Let It Go can be said to be a transformation sequence where Elsa in just 4 minutes grows up and goes from being an introverted and frightened girl to being a mature, confident woman. One of the children in my study, Miranda, she explained this transformation by referring to the music. She said, "Let It Go is more sad, but then it also becomes a little happy because Elsa learns who she truly is." So here, Miranda is equating the musical development with Elsa's psychological development. In the beginning of Let It Go, Elsa has just run away from home after a fight with her sister Anna, where Elsa's magical powers has run out of control. She flees to the mountains and Let It Go begins. In the beginning, we see Elsa walking toward the mountaintop while the piano plays the introduction of the song. Elsa is here shown from a high angle and at a great distance, so she looks really small. At this point, all we hear is a solo piano that sounds kind of fragile because it is very high-pitched and it has a bell-like timbre. The camera, so to speak, then zooms in on Elsa and she begins singing the first verse about being the queen of isolated, cold, snowy mountains. At this point, Elsa's facial expressions is generally sad and her body language is closed, with her arms often being in front of her body. At this point of the sequence, the girls in my study clearly focused on the sadness they heard in the music. So Erica described the introduction by saying that the piano, it's kind of sad and quiet. And Miranda said that it's the music, it's sort of sad. You've lost something, perhaps. In a way, she's lost the kingdom and herself. So here we again see that Miranda alternates between talking about the music and talking about Elsa. And she talks as if the feelings of the music and the feelings of Elsa are the same. A third girl, Louise, she had a more detailed response and she explained that this sad feeling arises because the music is in the minor mode and because Elsa's face is sad. The children in my study generally agreed that Elsa is very sad at the beginning of the song, but they also said that they believed Elsa to change throughout the song and become happier and perhaps a little angry. The children couldn't agree exactly how Elsa feels towards the end because several of them saw Elsa as a complicated character with conflicting emotions. But they all talked about her as going through some kind of transformation and as changing from a negative to a more positive state. As we saw in the earlier quotes, the older children, they also argued that Elsa's change is due to her finding herself and somehow breaking free from her old life. This transformation is partly communicated through the lyrics, which end with Elsa deciding to leave the past in the past and to move on with her life on her own, in acceptance of her powers. Here, being alone is no longer verbalized as loneliness as it was in the beginning, but rather as freedom. But the transformation is not only carried by the lyrics, it is also constructed and nuanced by the musical aspects of Let It Go. So Let It Go is composed in such a way that it gradually becomes more and more energetic throughout the song. More and more instruments are added, the timbre becomes richer and the rhythm becomes much more active. This is perhaps most clearly signaled if we juxtapose the acoustical solo piano playing at the beginning of the song and then the very powerful pop orchestra that plays towards the end. Similarly, Elsa's body language and face also opens up. She starts spreading her arms and there are more colors introduced throughout the sequence. This transition begins slowly around the end of the first verse, where the piano becomes more active. Freya, one of the girls in my study, she responded to this change by saying, "Listen, she's changing now." And later, towards the end of the song, Freya explained that it sounds much louder and much more raw and really happy now, and she's loving that everything is going so fast now. So here again, we see that Freya is equating musical expression with the way that Elsa is thinking. And here, Freya even comments specifically on volume, timbre, and rhythmical activity as signifying an emotional change. So, to sum up and conclude, in the examples that I have talked about in this short presentation, we see that children associate musical timbre, tempo, rhythmic activity, harmony and volume with Elsa's thoughts and feelings. In general, there seems to be a connection between the level of energy perceived in the music and the kind of emotions that children infer from it. So quiet, slow music is often associated with sadness, whereas energetic music can be both associated with joy, with anger, or with fear, because these are all high energy emotional states. Because of this relation between music and emotion, music can help guide audiences' interpretation of characters, making the characters easier to identify with. Thank you for listening.